Royal Guard Horse Dismounts are back. Horse Guards, Royal Guard, King's Guard Horse. These were no ordinary riders. They were the Horse Guards, the elite regiment that had served the royal family for generations. Their reputation was built on discipline, precision, and an unwavering sense of duty. To watch them was to witness a living piece of history, where every movement and gesture told a story of centuries of tradition. Tourists from all corners of the world would gather in the early morning, cameras ready, eager to capture a glimpse of this timeless ceremony. The scene was almost magical, with the sunlight glinting off the guards, polished armor, and the horses, coats shining as if brushed with gold. It was a moment frozen in time, a reminder that some traditions never fade, no matter how modern the world around them became. The Horse Guards were known for their calm composure, and their ability to remain completely still during long hours of ceremonial duties. Their horses were equally remarkable, trained from a young age to respond to subtle commands and to ignore distractions that would unsettle ordinary animals. Together, horse and rider formed a bond that was as much about trust as it was about skill. The public often marveled at how seamlessly the pair moved together, each step in perfect synchronization, as though guided by an invisible thread connecting them. Children would press their noses against the glass barriers, eyes wide with awe, while adults took careful photographs, hoping to capture just a fraction of the dignity and grace on display. For the guards themselves, this was more than a job. It was a calling, a commitment to uphold traditions that had been passed down through countless generations. They followed strict routines every day, beginning long before dawn. The horses were groomed meticulously, their manets combed, their hooves polished, and their coats brushed until they gleamed in the morning light. The guards, in turn, donned their uniforms with care, ensuring that every button, every strap, and every piece of armor was perfectly aligned. There was a quiet pride in these preparations, a sense that they were part of something much larger than themselves, a living symbol of history that connected the past to the present. Despite the elegance and perfection displayed during public ceremonies, the life of a horse guard was far from easy. It required discipline, patience, and an unwavering dedication to both horse and duty. Every movement had to be precise. Every gesture had to reflect the professionalism expected of someone representing the royal family. Mistakes were rare, but when they occurred, they were deeply felt, not just by the guard, but by the entire regiment. The bond between horse and rider was particularly crucial, as the horses were not just animals. They were partners, capable of sensing the slightest hesitation or uncertainty in their riders. Training these horses took years, and even then the guards had to remain vigilant, as every parade, every ceremonial event demanded absolute perfection. In the midst of this routine, there was a particular tradition that had once captivated the public more than any other: the ceremonial dismount. Decades ago, during important state occasions, the guards would dismount from their horses with a precise, elegant motion, stepping onto the ground in perfect harmony. It was a sight that symbolized respect, discipline, and mastery. The dismounts were not just about ceremony. They were a demonstration of the deep connection between the rider and the horse, showcasing years of training, trust, and dedication. However, over time, this tradition had quietly faded from public view. The reasons were many: safety concerns, changes in ceremonial routines, and the challenges of coordinating large-scale events. By the time the current generation of horse guards had begun their training, the dismounts had become a rare occurrence, mentioned in historical records but rarely seen in practice. Yet the spirit of the tradition lingered in the hearts of the guards. In quiet moments, away from the public eye, some would recall the old stories, imagining how their predecessors had executed the dismount with flawless grace. They spoke of it as a symbol of excellence, a goal to aspire to, even if it seemed out of reach in their daily routines. The thought of bringing the tradition back one day was inspiring, a dream that combined respect for history with the excitement of reviving a nearly lost art. It reminded them that while the world around them changed, the essence of the horse guards, duty, discipline, precision, and honor, remained constant. For the public, however, much of this history remained a mystery. Tourists would see the horses and the riders, admire their uniforms, and clap politely as the guards performed their routines. Few realized the depth of preparation involved, the countless hours of training, and the centuries of tradition that informed every movement. It was easy to take for granted the elegance of the parade or the calm authority of the guards on horseback, not knowing the discipline and care that made it possible. For the guards, this lack of awareness was not discouraging. Instead, it reinforced the quiet dignity of their work. They performed their duties not for applause, but because it was their responsibility, their way of honoring a legacy that was larger than themselves. As the years passed, the city itself became a backdrop to the ongoing story of the Horse Guards. Modern buildings rose around the historic parade grounds, and the noise of daily life, cars, buses, and crowds, contrasted sharply with the calm, deliberate movements of the guards and their horses. Yet this contrast only made the tradition more striking. In a world that never stopped, the Horse Guards remained a symbol of continuity, a reminder that some values, some disciplines, and some rituals were timeless. Each ceremonial event, each routine patrol, was a testament to the endurance of history in a city that was constantly evolving. The story of the Horse Guards was not just about ceremony. It was about human and animal partnership, the pursuit of excellence, and the quiet satisfaction of upholding a tradition that few could truly appreciate. The bond between guard and horse was a silent language, a conversation of gestures, movements, and trust that spoke volumes without words. It was in this partnership that the true magic of the Horse Guards was revealed, a living, breathing connection to the past, carried forward into the present and preserved for the future. Even as the tradition of ceremonial dismounts faded, the essence of the Horse Guards endured. Their presence reminded everyone who watched that history was not just found in books or museums, but in people and animals living out their roles with care, precision, and dedication. And somewhere in the minds of those who served, there remained a quiet hope that one day the old tradition would return, bringing with it a sense of wonder and awe that could once again captivate the world. Until then, the guards continued their work with unwavering pride, their horses at their side, embodying a legacy that was as enduring as the city itself. After years of routine, a change began to stir quietly within the walls of the Royal Horse Guards. A new commanding officer had taken charge, a man who carried the weight of history in his heart and believed deeply in the importance of preserving the traditions of the regiment. Unlike many before him, he remembered the stories told by older guards, tales of ceremonial dismounts performed with flawless precision during state occasions, where the guard and horse moved as one, symbolizing respect, skill, and harmony. He felt that this tradition, though largely forgotten by the public, was far too valuable to remain hidden in the past. The idea of reinstating the ceremonial dismounts was met with mixed reactions. Some of the experienced guards welcomed the proposal with cautious optimism. They remembered fragments of the old practices, had seen the illustrations in dusty regimental books, and understood the symbolic power of the tradition. Others, however, were skeptical. They questioned whether it was practical in the modern era. Horses and riders had trained in a slightly different style, and public events had changed over time, becoming more crowded and unpredictable. The concern was real. Reintroducing the dismounts meant extensive training, attention to safety, and the possibility of mistakes in front of the public. But despite the doubts, the commanding officer's vision was clear, and his determination was unwavering. He began with small steps, believing that patience and preparation were key. Training sessions were scheduled early in the morning when the streets were quieter and the horses calmer. Each session focused not just on the physical act of dismounting, but on building trust between rider and horse. The guards practiced stopping their horses smoothly, adjusting their posture, and coordinating every movement with precision. Meanwhile, the horses were gradually acclimated to the unusual motions and the occasional noises that might occur during public ceremonies. It was not an easy process. Some horses were initially nervous, hesitant to step onto the ground from the high saddle, while some guards struggled to synchronize their movements perfectly. The sessions were long, requiring both patience and persistence, but the determination of the regiment never wavered. Beyond the technical training, there was an emotional journey unfolding. The older guards who had grown up hearing stories of the ceremonial dismounts felt a renewed sense of purpose. For them, it was not just about tradition. It was about reconnecting with a history they cherished. Younger guards, many of whom had never witnessed a dismount, were fascinated by the challenge and eager to master a skill that connected them to centuries of predecessors. Conversations around the stables were filled with excitement, advice, and sometimes laughter, as mistakes were made and corrected. The bonds between guards strengthened, as everyone realized they were part of a shared mission, a living link to the past. The first time the idea was demonstrated publicly, even in a small, controlled setting, nerves were high. The commanding officer stood quietly, watching as the lead rider guided the horse into position. A hush fell over the small crowd of spectators, mostly other guards and a few invited guests. The horse stopped, muscles tense, and the rider prepared to dismount. Every eye followed the movement, anticipating a flawless execution. For a moment, time seemed to pause. The rider moved gracefully, one foot leaving the stirrup, then the other, landing softly on the ground. The audience held their breath until the motion was complete. Applause followed, cautious at first, then warm and enthusiastic. The demonstration was not perfect. There had been a slight hesitation, but it was enough to show that the tradition could be revived. Encouraged by this small success, the regiment expanded the practice sessions. Guards were paired with different horses, learning to adapt to each animal's temperament. Some horses were naturally confident, following the rider's lead effortlessly, while others were more sensitive and required gentle encouragement. Guards discovered that the key was understanding their horse as an individual, paying attention to subtle cues, and responding with patience. This process, while challenging, was incredibly rewarding. It strengthened the bond between horse and rider, fostering trust and cooperation that would be essential for the eventual public displays. The public, still largely unaware of the revival, would soon play an important role. The commanding officer envisioned a day when the ceremonial dismounts would return as a highlight of public events, capturing the attention of locals and tourists alike. He knew that if executed correctly, it would reignite fascination with the horse guards, not just as soldiers on horseback, but as custodians of an extraordinary tradition. Preparations for this eventual public unveiling included careful planning of the parade route, crowd control, and even the timing of each step to ensure both horses and guards were comfortable and confident. Safety remained a top priority, but the goal was also to create a moment of beauty and history that could inspire anyone who witnessed it. During this time, the guards discovered that the process of bringing back the dismounts had benefits beyond the obvious. The training sessions improved overall discipline and teamwork within the regiment. Guards became more attentive to their horses, learning subtle techniques to calm, guide, and protect them. Horses became more responsive, more confident in the presence of crowds, and more comfortable with unusual movements. Even routine duties began to improve, as the guards carried the focus and precision from the dismount exercises into every aspect of their work. In a sense, the revival of the ceremonial dismounts was reshaping the entire regiment, strengthening it from the inside out. There were setbacks, of course. On some mornings, a horse might become startled, refusing to follow the expected movements. Some guards struggled with balance or timing, occasionally misjudging the step onto the ground. Each setback, however, became a learning opportunity. The commanding officer emphasized patience and persistence, reminding the guards that mastery required time and effort. He shared stories of past generations who had achieved perfection through repetition, focus, and calm determination, encouraging the guards to see their challenges not as failures, but as part of a journey toward excellence. As the weeks turned into months, confidence began to grow. Guards who had once been skeptical started to embrace the tradition, seeing it as a unique and honorable skill. The horses, too, seemed to sense the excitement, responding with increasing precision and calmness. Even the most nervous animals began to anticipate the movement, stepping carefully as the rider guided them through the sequence. Every session ended with a sense of accomplishment, as both horse and rider learned to trust each other more deeply. The training became a ritual in itself, a daily reminder that dedication and care could achieve results that were once thought impossible. Outside the stables, the city began to notice subtle changes. Passers-by might glimpse the guards practicing early in the morning, seeing horses move gracefully, riders coordinating each motion with care. Occasionally, someone would stop and watch, intrigued by the unusual activity. Rumors began to spread that something special was in preparation, and curiosity grew. The public unknowingly was becoming part of the story, eagerly awaiting a return to tradition they had never fully appreciated before. Through it all, the guards maintained their professionalism. They continued their daily duties, patrolling ceremonial grounds, and performing their public routines with the same precision as always. The additional training for the dismounts did not replace their core responsibilities. It enhanced them. Each guard understood that the success of the ceremonial dismounts depended on maintaining the high standards expected of the regiment at all times. The new tradition was not an extra performance. It was a testament to the skill, discipline, and care that defined the horse guards in every moment of their duty. By the end of this period, the regiment had transformed in subtle but meaningful ways. Guards were more confident, horses were more attuned to their riders, and the bond between man and animal was stronger than ever. The idea of bringing back the ceremonial dismounts was no longer just a vision, it was becoming a reality. The guards felt a sense of pride and excitement, knowing that they were about to reintroduce a piece of history that could inspire generations. They understood that this tradition was not merely about appearance. It was about respect, mastery, and the enduring connection between the past and the present. And so, with careful preparation, unwavering determination, and countless hours of practice, the horse guards moved closer to the day when the ceremonial dismounts would return to the streets of London. It was a journey that required patience, teamwork, and a deep respect for history, but the reward would be extraordinary. A moment when horse and rider could once again demonstrate the elegance, discipline, and pride that had defined the Royal Guard for centuries. As the horse guards moved closer to reintroducing the ceremonial dismounts, the challenge began to grow. What had started as small training sessions in quiet spaces now faced new pressures. The idea of performing in public meant that every detail had to be perfect, and even small mistakes could have consequences. Guards could no longer rely solely on their internal discipline. They had to anticipate distractions, loud noises, and the unpredictable reactions of both horses and people. What had once been a controlled, private activity now carried the weight of public expectation. The streets of London, bustling with tourists and daily life, became a source of tension. Horses that had once been calm in empty training spaces were now exposed to noises and crowds that tested their patience. A bus passing too closely, children running with excitement, or an unexpected shout could startle even the most experienced animal. Guards quickly learned that training their horses in isolation was no longer enough. They had to teach them to remain calm in a world full of surprises. Some mornings were filled with small mishaps, a horse refusing to follow its routine, a rider losing balance, or an unplanned stop that broke the flow. Each error was carefully examined and corrected, with lessons shared among the guards to prevent repetition. The personal pressure on the guards was also significant. Many of them had never performed the ceremonial dismounts in front of an audience, and the thought of doing so caused anxiety. Even with years of experience riding in parades and ceremonies, the added complexity of a precise, elegant dismount in front of the public was a new challenge. Guards spent hours visualizing the movements, imagining every step, every gesture, and every interaction with the horse. They practiced mindfulness, controlled breathing, and mental focus techniques to manage nerves, because they understood that a calm rider was essential for a calm horse. Despite the challenges, the team spirit within the regiment grew stronger than ever. Guards supported each other, offering advice, encouragement, and reassurance. Younger guards learned from the older ones, absorbing tips about posture, timing, and how to read a horse's subtle cues. Older guards, in turn, gained renewed enthusiasm, inspired by the eagerness and dedication of the newer recruits. Conversations in the stables were filled with laughter as mistakes happened, but also with determination and focus. Every misstep was seen as part of a learning process, a way to prepare for the perfect execution when the public would finally witness the ceremonial dismounts. Training became more complex as guards practiced with different horses. Each horse had its own personality. Some were bold and confident, others were shy and cautious. Guards discovered that a technique that worked with one horse might not work with another. This required flexibility, patience, and creativity. Some horses needed gentle guidance, while others responded better to firmness and clear signals. The process of understanding each horse individually deepened the bond between rider and animal, strengthening trust and communication in ways that extended beyond the dismount exercises. By working closely with each horse, the guards were learning skills that would improve every aspect of their daily routines. As the days passed, the regiment faced a new set of challenges: the coordination required for group dismounts. In previous public ceremonies, multiple guards had performed in perfect synchrony, creating a visual display of precision and discipline. To achieve this, every rider had to match the timing, pace, and position of others while simultaneously managing their horse. Training for group dismounts required careful planning, with guards practicing in small clusters before attempting larger formations. Mistakes were common at first. Horses would hesitate, riders would misjudge the timing, and the formation would break down. But through repetition, observation, and feedback, the team began to improve, learning to move as a single, unified unit. The emotional journey of the guards became as important as the physical training. They felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as the public debut approached. Each guard was aware of the responsibility, not just to execute the movements perfectly, but to honor the history and symbolism of the ceremonial dismounts. They carried the weight of centuries of tradition, understanding that the performance was more than a routine. It was a connection to the past, a demonstration of respect, and a source of inspiration for the public. The pride in this responsibility motivated them to persevere through fatigue, mistakes, and moments of self-doubt. Even as confidence grew, unexpected challenges continued to appear. Horses could become stubborn or distracted, sometimes reacting to noises in ways the guards could not anticipate. Riders had to adapt quickly, maintaining control while keeping the movements graceful and synchronized. Sometimes a horse would stop abruptly, testing the guard's ability to stay balanced and calm. Other times, an animal might move faster than expected, forcing the rider to adjust in mid-motion. These moments were stressful, but they also provided opportunities for learning, reinforcing the importance of focus, patience, and trust. Each challenge faced in training made the eventual performance more achievable, and every success boosted the morale of the entire regiment. To ensure readiness, the commanding officer introduced mock public demonstrations. Guards performed in front of small crowds of fellow officers, staff, and invited guests. These mock events were designed to simulate real conditions, including noise, movement, and distractions. Feedback was immediate and constructive. Observers noted small details: timing, posture, synchronization, and guards adjusted accordingly. The atmosphere was both intense and encouraging, as everyone understood that practice under pressure was essential for the success of the real public performance. These mock demonstrations also helped to build the confidence of both horses and riders, showing them that they could handle the demands of a live audience. Beyond training, the process highlighted the importance of care and respect for the horses. Guards were reminded that the animals were not tools, but partners in every sense. Proper grooming, feeding, and attention to the horses' comfort became integral parts of the preparation. Riders learned to recognize signs of stress or fatigue and adjusted their approach to ensure the well-being of each horse. This focus on care strengthened the bond between human and animal, creating a sense of mutual respect and cooperation that was essential for the success of the ceremonial dismounts. The horses, in turn, responded with greater confidence, poise, and willingness to follow the guards' commands. The anticipation within the regiment continued to build. Guards shared stories of past ceremonial dismounts, imagining the crowds, the grandeur, and the elegance of the movements. These stories were not just reminders of history, they became sources of motivation and inspiration. The thought of witnessing the return of a tradition lost for decades filled the guards with excitement and determination. Every early morning practice, every correction, every moment of focus was a step toward this long-awaited goal. They knew that when the day arrived, the ceremonial dismounts would not just be a display of skill. They would be a celebration of heritage, discipline, and the unique connection between horse and rider. As the final weeks of preparation approached, the regiment felt a mix of nerves and confidence. Guards had faced countless challenges, adapted to unexpected situations, and strengthened their partnerships with their horses. Every practice session had brought them closer to perfection. While there were still minor adjustments to be made, the commanding officer knew that the guards were ready to face the public. The stage was nearly set, and the moment when centuries-old tradition would come alive again was drawing near. The journey of this preparation was a story of persistence, teamwork, and resilience. It showed that even in modern times, the values of patience, dedication, and respect for tradition could achieve extraordinary results. The guards had not only learned to execute a complex and demanding task, they had strengthened their character, deepened their connections, and embraced the responsibility of carrying forward a remarkable legacy. When the ceremonial dismounts were finally performed, they would be the product of countless hours of effort, courage, and unwavering commitment to excellence. And so, the regiment continued to practice, to refine, and to perfect. Every morning brought new lessons, new challenges, and new victories. The excitement grew with each passing day, as horse and rider became more attuned, more confident, and more ready to bring a centuries-old tradition back to life. The story of their struggle, dedication, and triumph was unfolding not just within the regiment, but in the hearts of every guard who had embraced the journey, a journey that would soon be witnessed by the world, a moment when history, skill, and beauty would converge in perfect harmony. The day that the horse guards had been preparing for finally arrived. From the early hours of the morning, a special energy filled the air around the horse guards parade. The streets were lined with onlookers, eager to witness a piece of history being brought back to life. Tourists and locals alike had heard whispers of something extraordinary about to happen. Cameras and smartphones were raised, and excited murmurs passed through the crowd as people tried to catch a glimpse of the guards and their majestic horses. The atmosphere was a mix of anticipation, curiosity, and reverence for the long-standing tradition about to unfold. For the guards, the morning was a mixture of excitement and nervous tension. Each one moved with calm precision, performing final checks on uniforms, polishing boots, and adjusting armor. The horses, too, were groomed to perfection, their coats gleaming and their hooves shining. Riders whispered soft words to their mounts, offering reassurance and encouragement. Both horse and rider could feel the significance of the day. It was more than a demonstration. It was the culmination of months of preparation, patience, and dedication. Every guard understood that they were about to perform not only for the public, but for the legacy of the regiment and the centuries of history that had brought them to this moment. The commanding officer gave final instructions with quiet authority. He reminded the guards that perfection was important, but so was composure, trust, and mutual understanding with their horses. He emphasized that the audience would witness more than skill. They would witness harmony, respect, and the unique bond between rider and horse. The guards listened attentively, nodding in agreement, as their nerves began to settle into focused determination. Years of training and preparation had led to this day, and the regiment was ready to rise to the challenge. As the formation began to take shape, the crowd grew silent, sensing the importance of the moment. Guards moved their horses into precise positions, each rider maintaining perfect posture and alignment. The horses stood tall and alert, muscles taut, responding to every subtle signal from their riders. Observers held their breath as the first motion began, a step so controlled it seemed almost ceremonial even in its simplicity. The rhythm of the group, the synchronized movements of the horses, and the sharp focus of the guards created a visual display of discipline and elegance, unlike anything the audience had seen in decades. When the lead guard prepared to perform the first dismount, tension was palpable. The horse halted smoothly, every muscle under control, and the rider carefully shifted weight, placing one foot onto the stirrup. The crowd watched silently, captivated by the precision of each movement. Slowly, deliberately, the rider lifted themselves from the saddle, landing softly on the ground. The audience exhaled collectively, some gasping in admiration, others breaking into gentle applause. It was perfect, a moment of harmony that captured both skill and tradition. The sense of awe in the air was tangible, as if the centuries of history behind the tradition had come alive in that single, elegant movement. One by one, the guards followed, each performing the ceremonial dismount with careful precision. The coordination required was immense. Every rider had to anticipate the movements of those around them, adjusting their pace and position to maintain the flawless formation. Horses responded with calm cooperation, their training and trust in their riders shining through. Even the slightest hesitation could have disrupted the flow, yet every step was executed with poise and control. The audience was mesmerized, witnessing a spectacle that was at once beautiful, disciplined, and deeply respectful of history. Despite the apparent ease of the display, the guards were highly focused. Inside their minds, they were aware of every detail. The balance of their own movements, the response of the horse, the position of fellow guards, and the timing of each step. The success of the ceremonial dismounts depended on absolute attention, yet each rider also exuded confidence and calm. It was a delicate balance, a combination of technical skill and emotional composure that had been honed through months of training. The guards understood that their performance was not just about showing the public a tradition. It was about honoring it fully, demonstrating respect for the horses, the audience, and the centuries of history that had made this moment possible. As the performance continued, small, unexpected challenges arose. A horse shifted its weight slightly, requiring the rider to adjust mid-motion. A sudden shout from a bystander momentarily startled another horse. But every guard adapted instantly, their months of preparation allowing them to respond without disrupting the flow. These small moments of improvisation, handled with grace and control, were a testament to the skill and dedication of the regiment. The audience, unaware of the behind-the-scenes challenges, experienced only the beauty and precision of the performance, their admiration growing with each movement. The synchronization of the group became a highlight of the ceremony. Watching multiple guards perform their dismounts simultaneously created a powerful visual effect. Horses and riders moved as one, a living embodiment of discipline, harmony, and tradition. The crowd erupted into applause, clapping for the elegance, precision, and courage of the guards and their horses. Some spectators were moved to tears, overwhelmed by the sense of history being brought to life before their eyes. Others captured the moment with photographs, hoping to preserve the memory of a spectacle that would likely not be seen again for many years. For the guards, the applause was gratifying but secondary. Their focus remained on the task at hand, ensuring that every movement was executed flawlessly. Inside, however, there was a quiet pride, a recognition that their hard work, patience, and perseverance had led to this moment. Each guard felt a connection to their predecessors, imagining the generations of riders who had performed similar ceremonies, maintaining the traditions that defined the regiment. The performance was not just a display of skill, it was a continuation of a living history, a bridge connecting the past to the present. The commanding officer observed the entire performance with a sense of satisfaction and pride. He knew that this moment represented more than months of training. It symbolized the resilience of the regiment, the dedication of the guards, and the enduring importance of tradition. He had witnessed nerves transform into confidence, challenges into mastery, and doubt into celebration. The success of the ceremonial dismounts was a reflection of the collective effort, patience, and unity of the entire team. It was a testament to what could be achieved when respect for history was combined with skill, discipline, and determination. The ceremony concluded with a final flourish. Horses and riders returned to formation, standing tall and proud, embodying both the grace and strength of the regiment. The audience, filled with admiration and respect, gave a sustained round of applause. Tourists and locals alike approached with smiles, eager to learn more about the history they had just witnessed. Conversations buzzed about the precision, beauty, and emotional impact of the ceremonial dismounts. For the guards, the moment was both a culmination and a beginning, a reminder that tradition could be revived, celebrated, and appreciated in the modern world. In the quiet moments after the performance, the guards reflected on what had just been achieved. Months of preparation, countless hours of practice, and unwavering dedication had resulted in a flawless display that honored history and inspired those who witnessed it. The bond between horse and rider was stronger than ever, forged through trust, patience, and shared effort. Guards exchanged quiet congratulations, smiles, and nods of respect, understanding that they had accomplished something extraordinary together. The success of the ceremonial dismounts had become a shared triumph, a milestone in the story of the horse guards that would be remembered for years to come. The public debut of the ceremonial dismounts was more than a visual spectacle. It was a celebration of values that defined the regiment: discipline, respect, patience, and dedication. It reminded everyone present that tradition, when approached with care and reverence, could be both timeless and inspiring. The audience left with a sense of awe, not just at the skill displayed, but at the story of effort, perseverance, and connection that made the moment possible. The Horse Guards had succeeded in bringing history alive, demonstrating that the past could be honored while still engaging the present. Even after the crowd dispersed, the significance of the day remained. Guards continued to care for their horses, sharing quiet moments of gratitude and reassurance. Horses were fed, groomed, and praised for their calmness and cooperation. The regiment understood that the success of the ceremonial dismounts depended not just on human skill, but on the partnership with their animals. Each horse, like each rider, had played a vital role in the achievement, and the bond between them was celebrated with care and respect. By the end of the day, it was clear that a new chapter had begun. The ceremonial dismounts, once thought to be a tradition of the past, had been revived, honored, and shared with the public. The performance demonstrated that with patience, training, and respect, even centuries-old practices could be restored in a way that resonated with modern audiences. The Guards had not only performed a ritual, they had inspired admiration, curiosity, and appreciation for the values that had defined the regiment for generations. The day concluded with a sense of quiet triumph. Guards returned to the stables, reflecting on their accomplishment and the journey that had led to this moment. They understood that their work would continue, that maintaining the tradition would require ongoing dedication and care. But for now, there was a deep satisfaction in knowing that they had succeeded, that the ceremonial dismounts had returned to the streets of London, and that the public had witnessed a living connection to history, discipline, and excellence. The days following the public debut of the ceremonial dismounts were filled with quiet reflection and a renewed sense of purpose for the Horse Guards. The streets of London had returned to their normal rhythm, yet the impact of the performance lingered. Tourists spoke excitedly about the precision and elegance they had witnessed, and locals shared stories of seeing history brought to life in a way that was both moving and unforgettable. Newspapers, social media posts, and word of mouth celebrated the return of a centuries-old tradition, and the Horse Guards quietly took pride in their achievement. For the Guards themselves, the aftermath was both rewarding and humbling. Months of preparation, training, and careful practice had culminated in a flawless performance, but the journey did not end there. They understood that maintaining the tradition required continued dedication and care. Each guard returned to daily routines with a renewed sense of responsibility, knowing that their work extended beyond public ceremonies. The attention to detail, patience, and discipline required for the ceremonial dismounts now influenced every aspect of their duties. Grooming, training, and riding were approached with greater care, and every interaction with their horses was infused with the lessons learned from months of preparation. The horses, too, had been changed by the experience. The trust and communication between rider and animal were stronger than ever. Guards observed subtle shifts in behavior, horses responding more readily to commands, remaining calm under pressure, and displaying confidence during routines. The performance had not only tested their skills, but also deepened the connection between human and animal, reinforcing the idea that partnership, patience, and mutual respect were essential to success. In many ways, the horses had become active participants in preserving history, demonstrating their own form of discipline and grace alongside their riders. The commanding officer took the opportunity to share reflections with the Guards. He spoke about the significance of what they had achieved, not just in terms of the performance, but in how it represented the values of the regiment: dedication, discipline, respect, and resilience. He emphasized that their success was a reminder that traditions could be revived and honored, even in a modern world, when approached with care, focus, and collaboration. The officers listened attentively, understanding that their role was more than ceremonial. It was a living connection to history, a responsibility to maintain the legacy of those who had come before them. The public response added an unexpected layer of fulfillment. Letters, messages, and comments poured in from people who had witnessed the performance. Many wrote about the inspiration they felt, not just from the display itself, but from the story behind it, the months of preparation, the dedication of the guards, and the deep bond with their horses. Parents shared that their children had been captivated by the spectacle, asking questions about history, horses, and the discipline required to achieve such precision. Teachers and historians praised the guards for bringing history alive in a way that was both educational and emotionally impactful. The success of the ceremonial dismounts had transcended performance. It had become a shared experience that connected the past, present, and future. Within the regiment, camaraderie grew stronger. Guards reflected on the months of training, the challenges they had overcome, and the shared triumph of the public debut. Mistakes and setbacks during preparation were now seen as stepping stones to success. Conversations in the stables were filled with both humor and pride, as guards recounted small errors, unexpected moments, and the determination that carried them through. The shared experience of striving for perfection, learning from each challenge, and achieving their goal together created a sense of unity that extended beyond the ceremonial performance. The success of the ceremonial dismounts also inspired new initiatives within the regiment. Officers began exploring ways to incorporate the tradition into regular training, ensuring that new recruits would learn the skill from the start of their service. Workshops and practice sessions were established to keep both guards and horses proficient, while also introducing younger members to the historical significance of the practice. The revival of the tradition became more than a single event. It evolved into an ongoing part of the regiment's identity, preserving history while fostering continuous learning and improvement. For many guards, the experience was deeply personal. It reinforced the values of patience, persistence, and attention to detail. Guards who had doubted their abilities found confidence through practice, observation, and repeated effort. Horses taught lessons in empathy, understanding, and trust. Together, rider and animal demonstrated that mastery was not achieved through talent alone, but through consistent effort, mutual respect, and a commitment to excellence. These lessons extended beyond the stables and ceremonial grounds, influencing how the guards approached daily life, work, and their interactions with others. The public had witnessed only a fraction of the story, the final, elegant execution of the ceremonial dismounts. What they did not see was the countless hours of preparation, the patience required to train both horses and riders, the moments of frustration and doubt, and the perseverance that made perfection possible. Yet this hidden story added to the sense of accomplishment within the regiment. Guards understood that true success was not measured by applause alone, but by the dedication, teamwork, and resilience demonstrated behind the scenes. This awareness created a quiet pride, a sense that they had honored not only tradition but also the values that defined the Royal Horse Guards. Over time, the ceremonial dismounts became a symbol not only of history but of possibility. They reminded everyone, both within the regiment and among the public, that challenges could be overcome through focus, patience, and collaboration. They demonstrated that dedication to excellence, respect for others, and care for the animals could produce results that were both beautiful and meaningful. The performance had created a bridge between generations, allowing young and old, local and visitor, to witness the value of tradition, effort, and partnership. The emotional resonance of the event lingered for months. Guards often reflected on the day of the public debut, recalling the hush of the crowd, the precision of the movements, and the quiet strength of the horses. These memories reinforced the significance of their work and the responsibility they carried. The ceremonial dismounts were no longer just a revived tradition. They had become a living example of what could be achieved when dedication, discipline, and respect were combined. The guards, their horses, and the public had all been part of something larger than themselves, a shared moment of history brought vividly to life. For the regiment, the impact was enduring. New recruits were inspired to learn from the example set by the guards who had revived the tradition. Training emphasized not only technical skill, but also patience, empathy, and the importance of building trust with the horses. Officers emphasized that every performance, no matter how routine it seemed, was part of a larger story, a story of commitment, history, and values that had been preserved over centuries. The ceremonial dismounts became a benchmark for excellence, a symbol of what could be achieved through careful preparation, teamwork, and respect for tradition. The legacy of the ceremonial dismounts extended beyond the regiment. Tourists, historians, and locals carried the story forward, sharing it with friends, family, and communities. Children who had watched the performance were inspired to learn about history, horses, and the discipline required for mastery. Teachers used the example to illustrate the importance of preparation, patience, and respect for tradition. The guards had created a ripple effect, showing that a single, carefully executed tradition could inspire curiosity, admiration, and a desire to learn across generations. In quiet moments, the guards often reflected on the personal growth that had come from this experience. They had learned that challenges, setbacks, and uncertainty were part of any worthwhile endeavor. They had discovered the value of collaboration, the importance of understanding others, both human and animal, and the satisfaction that came from seeing months of hard work come to fruition. The ceremonial dismounts had taught lessons far beyond technical skill. They had become a metaphor for life itself, showing that perseverance, patience, and care could produce results that were not only successful, but also meaningful and lasting. As the regiment continued its duties, the ceremonial dismounts became a regular part of life at the Horse Guards parade. Guards approached their work with renewed energy, knowing that their efforts were part of a living tradition that inspired others. The horses, calm, confident, and responsive, remained partners in this ongoing journey, demonstrating that skill and harmony could be achieved through trust, training, and mutual respect. Together, guards and horses embodied values that were timeless: discipline, dedication, patience, and honor. The revival of the ceremonial dismounts had achieved more than anyone could have anticipated. It had strengthened the regiment, inspired the public, and preserved a tradition that might otherwise have been lost. It had created a shared experience that connected people to history, reminded them of the value of effort and perseverance, and demonstrated the beauty of harmony between human and animal. Above all, it had shown that with patience, preparation, and respect, even centuries-old traditions could be revived and celebrated in a modern world. And so, the story of the ceremonial dismounts came full circle. What had begun as a quiet idea within the mind of a commanding officer had become a living, celebrated tradition. The guards, their horses, and the public had all played a part in this achievement, creating memories that would last for generations. The legacy of the ceremonial dismounts was secure, not just as a performance, but as a lesson in dedication, teamwork, and the enduring power of history.